All right, Mr. Markopoulos, I would like to just say for the record that I see you as a modern-day Greek hero, and I want to thank you for the perseverance. I was kind of amused a little bit to note that after all these years, you finally quit the investigation earlier last year. Why was that?
It was so much pent-up frustration. To that point, I'd been in the FCC's doormat for 8 years and taken a lot of abuse from that agency and was ignored by that agency. I only had 2 champions within the SEC out of 3,500. So 3,498 people at the SEC were not helping me. I had 2 advocates, 2 champions in Boston, Ed Mannion and Mike Garrity. That was the only support I got. And Mr. Mannion told me it was my public duty to keep leading the investigative team forward, because if I didn't do it, no one would. And it was such a danger to our capital markets if this was left unchecked that I needed to step into the breach and do something. But after my April 2nd submission of last year to the SEC's Director of Risk Assessment, Mr. Jonathan Sokoban, and I got no response back, at that point I lost all confidence in the SEC.
You spoke about not using your name, handing over documents with gloves on. You know, that's a bit of paranoia, one might say. And I want to know why you had that concern and if you suffered any recriminations.
I don't consider it paranoia, and the reason is Mr. Madoff was running such a large scheme of unimaginable size and complexity, and he had a lot of dirty money. And let me describe dirty money to you. When you're that big and that secretive, you're going to attract a lot of organized crime money, and which we now know came from the Russian mob and the Latin American drug cartels. And when you are zeroing out mobsters, you have a lot to fear. And he could not afford to get caught, because once he was caught, and once he knew, if he would have known my name and that he knew that he had a team tracking him, I didn't think I was long for this world.
All right. In your testimony, you referenced Ms. Chung in New York as the branch chief. And you say, she never grasped any of the concepts in my report, nor was she ambitious enough or courteous enough to ask questions of me. Her arrogance was highly unprofessional given my understanding of her responsibilities and mandates. When I questioned whether she understood the proof, she dismissed me by telling me that she handled the multi-billion-dollar Adelphi case. I then replied that Adelphi was a mere few billion-dollar accounting fraud and that Madoff was complex derivative fraud that would easily be several times the size of Adelphi. She never expressed even the slightest interest in asking me questions. She told me that she had my report and that if needed more information, she would call me. She should be fired.
She already left the agency, but otherwise I would agree. It's too late.
You referenced that you thought there needed to be house cleaning, and yet there are people by your own reference in the New York Attorney General's office and in the Massachusetts Security Division that are doing great work. So it's not a lack of talent out there, it's a lack of really identifying the talent and bringing them in. Wouldn't you say that? I
would agree, and I would urge the Congress to consider the fine examples set by the New York Attorney General's office and the Massachusetts Securities Division. They give great regulation on the big cases, they're nationwide fraud cases, and they get full restitution to the victims. They're aggressive, but they're small. They don't do a lot of examinations. All they do is take in whistleblower tips and act upon them and act vigorously. They're pit bulls against financial fraudsters, and here we have a pipsqueak of a flea in the SEC. So it's not the size of the dog, it's the size of the fight in the dog. And that's why I commend those 2 state regulators. They're very aggressive. And if the SEC does not reform itself, you have an option. Just disband the SEC, zero out their budget, put all 3,500 of those people on the streets because they're not protecting us right now, and just fund the New York Attorney General's office and the Massachusetts Securities Division.
My time is about to expire, so let me ask you one final question. Fairfield, Greenwich, and Tremont, sophisticated investors, and yet they did not do their due diligence. Should we be going after them as well? Should someone be going after them because they ripped off the American people?
I would say that they need to be looked into. If they didn't know, they were willfully blind. And they got paid a lot of money willfully blind.
Since I have opportunity for one more question, there was a reference made to the attorney in the SEC who later married Mr. Madoff's niece. Do you know any more about that?
I'm not privy to the SEC's investigation.
Thank you.